The year was 2847, and humanity had spread across 47 star systems. Commander Lucy Grant stood on the bridge of her starship called the Horizon's Edge and watched the stars drift past her viewport. She was a woman of 43 years with gray streaks in her dark hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of many battles fought and many friends lost. But on this quiet night in deep space, her thoughts were not on war. They were on history. Every human child learned the story of the Savior's War. It was taught in schools across all 47 systems. It was carved into monuments on Earth and Mars and every colony world. It was the story of how humanity almost died before it truly lived. In the year 2304, humanity was young among the stars. Their ships were slow, and their weapons were weak, and their numbers were few. 300 colony ships carrying 2 million human souls drifted through a region of space called the Omega Expanse. They were refugees fleeing a dying Earth, searching for new worlds to call home. They had no military escort because humanity had no real military. They had only hope and desperation and the dream of survival. The Dominion of R found them on the 17th day of their journey. The R were reptilian predators who had conquered 60 worlds and enslaved dozens of species. They saw the slow human ships and the helpless human passengers, and they saw easy prey. Their war fleet of 500 vessels surrounded the human convoy like wolves circling a wounded deer. The R commander broadcast a message to the human ships. He told them they would be taken as slaves. Their children would be sold. Their elderly would be killed. Their young adults would work in R mines until they died. This was the fate of the weak in a cruel universe. The humans had no way to fight. They had no way to run. Mothers held their children and fathers stood helpless, and everyone prepared to die or worse. The convoy commander sent out a desperate signal on all frequencies, begging anyone who could hear to help them. He expected no answer. The universe did not care about the weak. But someone answered. They were a species unlike any humanity had ever imagined. They were crystalline beings who stood 8 feet tall and communicated through harmonic frequencies that humans heard as beautiful music. They had watched the younger races of the galaxy from there of Prime for thousands of years. They rarely interfered in the affairs of others. They believed that kindness should be given freely without expectation of return, and that the strong had no obligation to protect the weak. But Elder, the oldest of the, heard the human distress call and felt something stir within the ancient crystal formations of their being. They saw images from the human ships. They saw mothers clutching bobbies. They saw children crying. They saw an entire species facing extinction before it had truly begun to live. Made a decision that would echo across 5 centuries. 200 warships emerged from fold space directly between the human convoy and the R fleet. They were beautiful vessels that shimmered with inner light and sang with frequencies that made the stars themselves seem to vibrate. They were not warriors by nature, but their technology was ancient and powerful, and the R knew this. Elder broadcast a message to the R commander. The translation was imperfect, but the meaning was clear. These beings are under our protection. Withdraw or face consequences. The R commander was furious. He demanded to know why they would risk war over worthless mammals. He demanded to know what the humans had offered in exchange for protection. He demanded to know the terms of the alliance. There is no alliance, replied. There is no payment. There is only this moment and this choice. We choose to protect them because they need protection. We choose kindness because it is right. Now withdraw or we will destroy your fleet. The R commander understood power. He understood threats. He did not understand kindness without reward, but he understood that his fleet would lose a battle against technology. He ordered his ships to withdraw. 2 million humans survived that day because strangers chose to help them. Lucy Grant thought about this story often. Her grandmother had been on one of those colony ships. A little girl of 7 years old, she had watched the vessels arrive through a viewport and had asked her mother if the singing lights were angels. In a way, her mother had replied, "They are." Lucy had never met a few humans had. After the Savior's War, the crystalline beings had retreated to there and resumed their quiet observation of the galaxy. They never asked for repayment. They never reminded humanity of the debt. They simply continued to exist in their corner of the cosmos and let the younger races grow and learn and make their own choices. But humanity remembered. Every human remembered. The alert signal broke Lucy from her thoughts. Her first officer, Daniel Park, rushed onto the bridge with fear in his eyes. He was a good man and a steady officer, and Lucy had never seen him look so shaken. "Commander," he said, "we are receiving a distress signal. The origin point is Prime." Lucy felt her heart stop for a moment. "What does it say?" Daniel played the message. It was fragmented and weak, but the harmonic frequencies were unmistakably. The translation matrix struggled to interpret the fading sounds. "To any who hear," the message said, "the syndicate has come. Our defenses have fallen. Our people are dying. We ask nothing. We expect nothing. But if anyone remembers what we once were, know that we face our end with peace in our hearts. We gave kindness freely and we regret nothing." The message dissolved into static. Lucy stood frozen for a long moment. The Syndicate was the successor state to the old R Dominion. They had grown even more powerful over the centuries, and they had never forgotten the humiliation at the Omega Expanse. They had waited and planned, and now they had struck at the ones who had protected humanity. Daniel spoke quietly. "Commander, Prime is deep in Syndicate territory. We would be one ship against their entire occupation fleet. Command would never authorize a rescue mission." Lucy turned to face him. Her eyes were hard and bright. "Set a course for Prime, maximum burn." "But Commander, we cannot possibly succeed alone." Lucy walked to the communications console and began recording a message. Her voice was steady and strong. "This is Commander Lucy Grant of the Horizon's Edge, broadcasting to all human vessels and all allied ships within range. That has fallen to the Syndicate. The same who saved 2 million human lives 5 centuries ago now face extinction. They ask for nothing. They expect nothing. But I am asking. I am calling upon every ship and every captain and every soul who remembers what they did for us. Come to Prime. Come repay the debt our ancestors could never repay. Humanity remembers every favor. Now let us show the galaxy what that means." She ended the recording and sent it on all frequencies. Daniel watched her with wonder and fear. "Do you truly believe anyone will answer?" Lucy looked out at the stars. "I believe that humanity never forgets, and I believe that today we will prove it." Admiral Victor had served the United Human Federation for 37 years. He had commanded fleets in 12 major engagements and had never lost a battle. His hair had turned white, and his face had grown weathered, but his mind remained sharp and his heart remained strong. When he received Commander Grant's message, he did not hesitate for even 1 second. He was aboard the flagship Eternal Gratitude when the broadcast arrived. The ship had been named specifically to honor the debt humanity owed to the. Every human warship carried a small crystal in its bridge, a gift from Prime given after the Savior's War. It was a reminder. It was a promise. "We will not forget." Immediately contacted High Command on Earth and requested authorization for a rescue mission. The admirals and politicians debated for 6 hours. They spoke of logistics and risks and the danger of provoking the Syndicate into open war. They spoke of treaties and trade agreements and diplomatic consequences. Listened to all of this, and then he spoke. 500 years ago, he said, 2 million humans faced death in the cold of space. They owed us nothing. We had nothing to offer them. We were weak and poor and insignificant, but they came anyway. They risked war with the R Dominion to protect strangers they had never met. They asked for nothing in return. They expected nothing. They simply saw beings in need and chose to help. Now those same face extinction. If we abandon them, we abandon everything we claim to stand for. We abandon our honor. We abandon our humanity. High Command authorized the mission. The rendezvous point was a quiet region of space just outside Syndicate territory. Arrived first with the Eternal Gratitude and 12 escort vessels. He expected perhaps 50 ships to answer the call. He had underestimated his own species. Within the first 6 hours, 47 ships arrived. Within 12 hours, that number had grown to 119. Captains sent messages explaining why they had come. One captain said her grandfather had been on the colony ships. Another said he had studied history all his life and wept when he heard the distress signal. A third said simply that some debts must be paid no matter the cost. By the end of the first day, 312 human vessels had gathered at the rendezvous point. It was the largest voluntary fleet assembly in human history. No one had been ordered to come. No one had been threatened or bribed. They came because they remembered. But the true surprise came on the second day. Communications officer Maria Santos was a young woman with quick hands and sharp eyes. She monitored the incoming signals and suddenly sat up straight in her chair. "Admiral," she said, "we are receiving transmissions from non-human vessels. They are asking permission to join our fleet." Walk to her station, identify them. Maria worked her console with growing amazement. "Sir, I am reading cruisers. 17 of them. Their commander says that humanity helped evacuate their colonies during the plasma storms of 2612. They say they owe us a debt and they wish to repay it now." Before could respond, more signals flooded in. The sent 23 vessels. Their representative explained that human agricultural experts had saved there from famine in 2489. The sent 19 ships. They remembered human shelters that had protected their children during the Great Exodus of 2701. The sent 31 warships. Human doctors had treated their wounded after a devastating battle and had asked for nothing in return. Species after species answered the call. They came from across the galaxy, some traveling for days at maximum speed to reach the rendezvous point in time. Each one carried the same message. Humanity never forgot us, so we never forgot humanity. Maria's voice trembled as she gave the final count. "Admiral, we now have 489 ships, 18 different species. All of them are ready to fight for the..." Stood in silence for a long moment. He had known that humanity remembered its debts. He had not known that so many others remembered theirs. Captain Helen Moore served as his tactical advisor. She was a small woman with a brilliant mind and a gift for strategy. She studied the assembled fleet with calculating eyes. "This is still a dangerous mission," she said. "The Syndicate has nearly 2,000 ships in the system. We are outnumbered 4-1. Nodded true, but numbers are not everything. He opened a channel to all vessels. "This is Admiral Victor. I want to thank each and every one of you for answering this call. Many of you have traveled far. Many of you are risking everything. But you came anyway because you understand something that the Syndicate will never understand. You understand that kindness creates bonds stronger than any treaty. You understand that gratitude can move fleets across the stars. You understand that the universe need not be cold and cruel if we choose to make it otherwise." He paused and looked at the tactical display, showing hundreds of ships from dozens of worlds. "We jumped to Prime in 6 hours. Some of us will not return, but those who survive will tell the story of this day to their children and their children's children. They will say that when the needed help, we came. They will say that humanity remembers every favor. And they will say that today, the galaxy learned what happens when you threaten those we call friends." On Prime, the situation grew more desperate by the hour. The Syndicate had landed ground forces and begun harvesting the planet's resources. Were rounded up and forced into underground caverns where they could be controlled. Elder huddled in the deepest chamber with 1,000 younger crystals. The ancient being's light had dimmed to barely a flicker, the needed sunlight to survive and communicate properly. Cut off from the surface, they were slowly dying. A young crystal named Prism still glowed with defiance. Someone will come, Prism said. Someone must remember what we did for the humans. Hummed a mournful frequency. We did not save the humans to be saved in return. We saved them because it was right. Kindness given with expectation of reward is not kindness at all. If we die here, we die knowing we acted with honor. That is enough. But Prism refused to accept this. The humans were different, the young Crystal insisted. They were grateful. They built monuments to us. They named their ships after us. They taught their children our story. Surely they will not abandon us. Said nothing. The elder had lived for thousands of years and had seen many species rise and fall. Most forgot their debts the moment danger passed. Most cared only for their own survival. The humans had seemed different once, but 5 centuries was a long time. Perhaps they had changed. Perhaps they had forgotten. Perhaps the universe was as cold as had always feared. Above the planet, Syndicate Commander received a troubling report. His sensor officer's scales had turned pale, and his voice shook with confusion. Commander, we are detecting multiple fold space ruptures at the edge of the system. Hundreds of them. His predatory eyes narrowed. Reinforcements from the Syndicate. No, sir. The signatures are varied, many different species, and at the head of their formation the officer paused and checked his readings twice. Human vessels, over 300 human vessels. Felt cold for the first time in decades. Why would the humans come here? They are nothing to them. Before anyone could answer, a broadcast filled all frequencies. It was Admiral speaking with calm authority. Attention Syndicate forces. This is Admiral Victor of the United Human Federation. 500 years ago, the stood between our ancestors and extinction. They asked for nothing. They expected nothing. They simply chose to help. Today we return that kindness. You have 1 hour to withdraw from this system. After that, you will learn what happens when you threaten those humanity calls friends. We remember every favor, and our vengeance echoes across worlds. Deep beneath the surface of Prime, Prism heard the broadcast through a damaged communications relay. The young Crystal's light blazed bright with joy. They came, Prism said. The humans came. Elder listened to the broadcast and felt something that had been dormant for centuries stirring within their ancient crystalline heart. It was hope. Commander had served the Syndicate for 40 years. He had conquered 19 worlds and broken countless enemy fleets. His name was spoken with fear across 100 systems, and his victories were celebrated in the halls of Syndicate power. He had never retreated from battle, and he would not start now. Certainly not because of humans and their sentimental attachments to a dying species. Dismiss their ultimatum, he ordered his communications officer. All ships form battle formation. We outnumber these fools 4 to 1. We will teach them what happens when they interfere with Syndicate affairs. The Syndicate fleet of 1,900 vessels arranged themselves in the classic R assault pattern. It was a formation perfected over centuries of conquest. The heavy battleships formed the center. The cruisers protected the flanks. The destroyers waited to pursue fleeing enemies. It was a wall of metal and fire that had crushed 100 armies. On the Eternal Gratitude, Admiral watched the enemy arrange themselves. They are not retreating, he observed. Captain Helen Moore stood beside him with her tactical display active. Did you expect them to, sir? No, but I wanted to give them the choice. Humanity is not cruel. We simply remember. He turned to his console and opened a channel to all Allied vessels. All ships, execute Operation Kindness returned. The Syndicate expected a conventional battle. They expected the Allied fleet to charge forward and meet them head-to-head. They expected superior numbers to decide the outcome. They were wrong about everything. During the 2-day journey to Prime, something remarkable had happened. The 18 different species in the Allied fleet had shared everything. They contributed their advanced shield harmonics that could adapt to enemy weapons in real time. They shared their neural-linked targeting systems that allowed gunners to aim with their thoughts. They provided intelligence from their infiltration of Syndicate communication networks. They offered their devastating close-range plasma weaponry. And humanity provided something less tangible but equally powerful. They provided coordination. 5 centuries of working with diverse alien species had made humans uniquely suited to bringing different groups together. Human officers served as liaisons between species that had never worked together before. Human communication specialists created translation protocols that allowed instant cooperation. Human tacticians designed battle plans that used each species' unique strengths. The result was a fleet that moved as one organism. The battle began with what appeared to be a mistake. Human destroyers surged forward in a ragged line that seemed poorly organized. Syndicate gunners opened fire, and the human ships scattered like frightened birds. "Smiled, already they break," he said. "This will be easier than I thought." But the human retreat was not a retreat. It was bait. As the syndicate ships adjusted their formation to pursue, the cruisers that had been hiding behind a nearby moon emerged on the enemy's left flank. Their adapted shields absorbed the first volley of syndicate fire, and their weapons struck true. 3 syndicate battleships exploded in the first 60 seconds. Shouted orders to counter the new threat. His fleet began to turn, but the turn created a gap in their formation and the assault ships were waiting. Their neural-linked weapons achieved hit rates that syndicate gunners could not match. Every shot found its target. Every target burned. Lucy Grant piloted the Horizon's Edge through the chaos. Her crew worked in perfect coordination, each person knowing exactly what the others would do. Daniel Park handled weapons while she handled navigation. They moved together like dancers in a deadly ballet. "Daniel," she called out, "get me a firing solution on that carrier." "Working on it, Commander. Their shields are rotating frequencies too fast." A calm voice cut into their channel. It was an officer speaking through the translation matrix. "Horizon's Edge, we captured their shield rotation algorithm from their command network. Transmitting now. Fire on the following frequencies." Lucy smiled grimly. "Humanity thanks you." The Horizon's Edge weapons found their mark, and the syndicate carrier erupted in flames. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. The Allied fleet moved like water around the rigid syndicate formations. They struck weak points and then retreated before counterattacks could land. They supported each other and covered each other's weaknesses. When a ship took heavy damage, vessels moved to shield it while human rescue craft evacuated the crew. Commander watched his tactical display with growing horror. His fleet was taking losses at an unacceptable rate. 600 ships destroyed or disabled in the first 3 hours. The Allied fleet had lost fewer than 70. "How?" he demanded. "How are they coordinating so perfectly? Different species cannot work together like this. It is impossible." His censor officer had no answer. The truth was beyond syndicate comprehension. The Allied fleet worked so well together because they wanted to work together. They were not forced into cooperation by fear or conquest. They chose it freely. Each species trusted the others because they shared a common bond of gratitude and friendship with humanity. The syndicate had built their empire on force. They had never understood that there were other ways to build power. 3 hours into the battle, the tide had turned completely. Syndicate ships began to break formation as captains realized they were facing destruction. Some tried to surrender. Others tried to flee. Admiral broadcast to the Allied fleet, "Do not pursue those who flee. Accept the surrender of those who yield. We are not here for vengeance. We are here to rescue the..." Lucy Grant heard this order and felt proud of her species. Humanity had every reason to hate the syndicate. The R descendants had tried to enslave them 5 centuries ago. They had attacked humanity's oldest friends. They deserved no mercy. But humanity offered mercy anyway, because that was who they were. Watched his fleet crumble around him. His second-in-command approached with fear in his eyes. "Commander, we must withdraw. We can return with reinforcements." Wanted to refuse. He wanted to fight to the last ship, but he was not a fool. He recognized defeat when he saw it. For the first time in 40 years, he ordered a retreat. The Syndicate fleet fled into fold space, leaving behind 600 wrecked vessels and a planet they had thought conquered. A cheer rose across the Allied fleet. Voices from 18 species celebrated together in a dozen languages. Admiral allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Then he silenced his crew with a raised hand. "The battle is won," he announced on all channels, "but our mission is not complete. We came here to save let us make sure they are safe." The Allied fleet moved into orbit around Prime. From above, the damage to the beautiful world was visible. The Syndicate had strip-mined several regions and damaged countless ancient crystal formations. Fires burned in some areas where cities had once stood. Lucy Grant studied the surface and felt her heart sink. "We won the battle," she said quietly to Daniel. "But did we arrive in time?" Daniel checked his sensors. "I am detecting life signs in underground caverns, thousands of them. They survived, but they are in bad shape. They need help immediately." Lucy nodded and prepared her landing team. The battle was over. Now came the harder task of healing the wounds that had been inflicted. On the surface of Prime, Syndicate ground forces threw down their weapons as Allied ships descended from the sky. They had seen what happened to their fleet. They had no desire to share that fate. In the deepest cavern, Elder felt the vibration of ships landing above. The ancient crystal's light had grown so dim that Younger could barely see it. "What is happening?" asked Weekly. Prism rushed to the entrance of the cavern and listened. "The fighting has stopped," the young crystal reported. "I hear new frequencies. They are not Syndicate. They are speaking human languages." Was silent for a long moment. Then the ancient being spoke in a frequency that carried exhaustion and wonder and something that might have been joy. "They came," said. "After all these centuries they came." The first human boots touched the surface of Prime as the last Syndicate transport fled into the sky. Lucy Grant led the landing party with 20 soldiers and 5 medical officers following close behind. The crystalline soil sang with strange harmonic frequencies beneath their feet, and the air shimmered with colors they had no names for. Lucy had studied images of Prime in history classes. The planet was supposed to be beautiful beyond description. Towers of living crystal were supposed to reach toward the heavens. Rivers of liquid light were supposed to flow between cities that had stood for 10,000 years. What she saw now broke her heart. The Syndicate had been thorough in their destruction. Crystal towers lay shattered across the landscape. Ancient formations that had taken to grow had been torn apart for their mineral content. The rivers of light had been drained into collection tanks that the fleeing Syndicate forces had abandoned. Daniel walked beside her with horror on his face. "How could anyone do this?" he asked. "This world was a wonder of the galaxy. Now look at it." Lucy had no answer. She had seen what cruelty could do, but she had never seen it on this scale. The Syndicate had tried to murder a world. Her scanner indicated life signs deep underground. She led her team toward a cave entrance that had been partially blocked by rubble. Human engineers arrived with equipment and began clearing the debris while Lucy broadcast on all frequencies that might monitor. "This is Commander Lucy Grant of the human vessel Horizon's Edge," she said. "We have come to help. If any can hear me, please respond. You are safe now." For a long moment there was only silence. Then a weak harmonic frequency emerged from somewhere deep below. The translation matrix struggled to interpret it. "You came," the voice said. "We did not believe anyone would come." Lucy felt tears forming in her eyes. "Of course we came. You saved us 5 centuries ago. Did you think we would forget?" The rubble was cleared within an hour. Lucy led her team down into the darkness. The tunnels were carved from pure crystal that would normally glow with inner light. Now they were dark and cold. They had been cut off from sunlight for days. Without light they could not properly resonate or communicate. They were slowly starving. The main cavern held nearly 1,000 huddled together in the darkness. Their crystalline bodies barely flickered with life. Many of the youngest had gone completely dark. Lucy did not know if that meant they were dead or simply dormant. "We need solar collectors down here immediately," she ordered through her communicator. "Medical teams begin assessment, and someone find their elder." Dr. Samuel Wright was the chief medical officer. He was an older man with gentle hands and a brilliant mind. He scanned the nearest with his equipment and shook his head grimly. "They need sustained light exposure," he reported, "and specific mineral compounds. Without both, they will continue to fade." "Can we save them?" "I believe so, but it will take time and resources." Lucy nodded. "Then we will provide both. Humanity owes these beings everything. We will not fail them now." Elder was found in the deepest chamber. The ancient crystal was barely visible, its light reduced to the faintest possible glow. Lucy knelt beside the elder with reverence. She knew she was in the presence of the being who had saved her grandmother and 2 million other humans 5 centuries ago. "Elder," she said softly, "I am Lucy Grant. My grandmother was on one of the colony ships you protected during the Savior's War. She told me stories about the singing lights that saved her people. She told me to never forget what you did for us." Light pulsed weakly. "The child survived," the elder said. "The little girl who watched us through the viewport." Lucy felt a chill run through her. "You remember her?" "I remember all of them, every face, every frightened child, every desperate parent. I remember wondering if we were doing the right thing, risking war with the R to protect strangers." Light flickered with what might have been amusement. "It appears we were." Over the following weeks, the Allied fleet established a permanent presence in the system. Human engineers worked alongside construction teams to repair the damaged infrastructure. Massive solar collectors were deployed to channel sunlight into the underground caverns. Medical specialists collaborated with human doctors to develop treatments for light-starved. They sent teams to help rebuild the communication networks. They provided security patrols to ensure no syndicate forces returned. Species that had never met them before worked tirelessly to restore their world. Young Prism recovered quickly once the light returned. The young crystal's glow blazed bright as Prism explored the surface and watched the alien species laboring to help. One day Prism approached a human engineer named Brooks who was repairing a power conduit near the main city. "Why are you here?" Prism asked. "Your people owed us a debt, but these others owe us nothing. Why do they help?" Wiped sweat from his forehead and smiled. "My grandmother used to tell me stories about the Savior's War. She said we should never forget what they did for us. So we remembered, and when we needed help coming here, we called on our friends." "But these friends of yours, the others, they gained nothing from helping the—" "Nodded true, but they owed us. We helped them when they needed it. So when we asked them to come, they came." He gestured at the bustling work crews around them. "That is how it works, see? Kindness spreads. You help someone and they help someone else. Eventually, the whole galaxy is connected by these threads of gratitude." Prism's light pulsed with a frequency that scholars would later identify as profound understanding. "We gave kindness freely without expecting return, and it returned anyway." Laughed. "That is the funny thing about kindness. The less you expect back, the more you seem to get." In the command center, established on the surface, Admiral met with representatives from all 18 species that had participated in the liberation. They gathered around a large table with holographic displays showing the progress of reconstruction efforts. "The Syndicate will return," warned the commander. A veteran warrior named High Shield, she had fought the Syndicate before and knew their ways. This defeat was humiliating for them. They will want revenge. "Then we will be ready," replied. "Not just humanity, all of us together." The representative was called Speaker for Many. She was small even by standards, but her voice carried authority. You propose a formal alliance. I propose something more than an alliance. I propose we build something new. An organization founded not on trade agreements or mutual defense pacts, but on a simpler principle. Kindness deserves to be remembered. Kindness deserves to be returned. Those who help others should be helped in return. The room fell silent as the representatives considered this. Elder had recovered enough to attend the meeting. The ancient crystal's light was still dim but growing stronger each day. Spoke with a frequency that filled the room with warmth. 5 centuries ago we helped humanity because it was right. We did not expect anything in return. If we had known it would lead to this moment, this gathering of species united by gratitude, paused as if searching for words, we would have done it anyway, but we are grateful nonetheless. The representatives began discussing details. What would this new organization look like? What would its rules be? How would it handle disputes between members? Lucy Grant stood at the back of the room and listened. Daniel Park stood beside her with wonder on his face. "Can you believe this?" he whispered. "All of this started because they helped our ancestors 500 years ago." Lucy nodded slowly. "And it will continue long after we are gone. Our children will tell this story to their children. Other species will join because they want to be part of something good. The syndicate tried to destroy thee, and instead they created something that will outlast their entire empire." Daniel smiled. "Humanity remembers every favor." Lucy smiled back, "and our kindness echoes across worlds." Outside the command center, the sun set over the damaged but healing landscape of Prime. Emerged from their underground shelters for the first time in weeks. Their crystalline bodies caught the fatting light and began to glow with colors that had not been seen since the invasion began. In orbit above, ships from 18 different species kept watch over the system. They had come from across the galaxy to repay debts and honor friendships. They had fought together and bled together, and now they were building something together. The universe was still cold and dark in many places, but on this world, on this night, it was a little bit warmer, a little bit brighter, and that light was spreading. 1 year passed since the Battle of Prime. The damaged world had healed faster than anyone expected. Crystal towers that had been shattered were growing again. Rivers of light had been restored. Who had nearly died in the darkness now sang with frequencies that could be heard across continents. Representatives from 43 species gathered on the planet's surface for the founding ceremony of the Gratitude Compact. They came from every corner of the galaxy. Some had traveled for weeks to be present. Some had never left there before, but all of them wanted to be part of what was being born on this historic day. Admiral Victor had retired from military service to become humanity's ambassador to the new organization. He stood before the assembled delegates with the crystalline towers of the restored capital rising behind him. The sky above was clear and blue and filled with ships from 100 different worlds. "We stand here today because of a simple truth," began. "The universe is cold and dark and uncaring. Stars burn and die without purpose. Planets spin through the void empty of meaning. The only warmth comes from each other. The only light comes from kindness freely given." He paused and looked out at the diverse assembly. Beings of crystal and flesh stood side by side. Species that breathed oxygen mingled with species that breathed methane. Creatures of scale and fur and feather and shell had gathered together in peace. The syndicate believed that power comes from conquest. They believed that strength means crushing the weak and taking what you want. They learned otherwise at this very world. They learned that kindness creates bonds stronger than any weapon. They learned that gratitude builds alliances more durable than any treaty signed under threat. In the crowd, Lucy Grant stood with Daniel Park and the crew of the Horizon's Edge. They had been honored as heroes of the liberation. Monuments had been built in their names. Songs had been written about their courage. Lucy felt uncomfortable with all the praise. She and her crew had simply done what needed to be done. Daniel noticed her discomfort. You know, he said quietly, humanity did not start this chain of kindness. The did. Lucy nodded, I know. But we kept it going. We made sure it did not end with us. Lucy considered this. I suppose that is all any of us can do. Receive kindness, pass it on, and remember. The ceremony continued with representatives from each species sharing their own stories. A commander spoke of human relief ships arriving during the plasma storms when all hope seemed lost. A elder described human agricultural experts who had worked day and night to save their crops from blight. A mother told of human shelters that had protected her children during the terrible exodus when her people had nowhere else to go. Story after story filled the afternoon, a tapestry of compassion woven across centuries and light years. Each thread connected to others until the pattern became clear. Kindness spread. Gratitude, what that had started 500 years ago, had grown into something that spanned the galaxy. When the speaking concluded, Elder rose to address the gathering. The ancient crystal's light had fully returned, glowed with warmth and wisdom that made even the youngest beings present feel at peace. When we saved the human refugees 5 centuries ago, began, we did not know what they would become. We did not know they would spread across the stars. We did not know they would touch so many other species with their unique gift for friendship. We did not know they would remember us in their darkest hours and their triumphs. The elders' harmonics filled the air with music that seemed to make the very stones sing along. We believed kindness should be given without expectation. That belief was correct, but the humans taught us something we did not know before. Kindness should also be returned, not because it is expected, not because there is obligation, but because returning kindness honors both the giver and the receiver. It strengthens the bonds that hold civilization together. It proves that the good we do matters. It proves that we are not alone in the darkness. Turn to face the human delegation directly. Humanity remembers every favor. Their vengeance against those who harm their friends echoes across worlds. But so too does their gratitude. So too does their compassion. So too does their stubborn refusal to abandon those who showed them kindness when they had nothing to offer in return. The elder's voice rose to fill every corner of the assembly. Let this compact stand as a testament to what kindness can build. Let it stand as a warning to those who prey upon the weak thinking no one will defend them. Let it stand as an invitation to all species who believe that the universe need not be cold and dark. Together we can fill it with light. The ceremony concluded with a ritual that combined traditions from all 43 founding species. Crystals were exchanged. Vows were spoken. Documents were signed with whatever appendage each species used for such purposes. When it was done, the Gratitude Compact was officially born. Fireworks lit up the sky above Prime. Ships from 43 species hung in orbit with their running lights twinkling like stars. Music played in a dozen different forms as beings celebrated in whatever way their cultures preferred. Lucy Grant found a quiet spot away from the festivities. She stood alone looking up at the stars and thinking about everything that had led to this moment. A desperate cry for help. A single ship setting course for certain death. A grandmother's stories about singing lights that had saved her life. Daniel found her there. He said nothing at first, just stood beside her and looked up at the same stars. My grandmother died 3 years ago, Lucy finally said. She was 97 years old. Right before the end, she grabbed my hand and told me to never forget She made me promise. Daniel waited in silence. I think about her a lot, Lucy continued. I wonder what she would think if she could see all of this. Ships from 43 species. An alliance built on gratitude. The beings who saved her life rescued from extinction by her granddaughter. I think she would be proud, Daniel said. Lucy smiled softly. I think she would say this is exactly what humanity was always meant to do. Remember, repay, pass it on. The syndicate did not attack again. The defeat at Prime and the formation of the Gratitude Compact had changed the political landscape of the galaxy. 43 species standing together were far too powerful to challenge directly. More importantly, the compact continued to grow. Every year new species joined. Some came seeking protection. Some came seeking friendship. Some came because they had heard the stories and wanted to be part of something good. The Syndicate's empire of fear and conquest slowly weakened as alternatives emerged. Species that had been conquered or threatened saw the compact as hope for something better. Rebellions sparked. Occupied worlds demanded freedom. The old ways of cruelty and domination began to crumble. 1 century after the founding, the Gratitude Compact included over 200 species and controlled more territory than the Syndicate ever had. But it was not an empire in any traditional sense. There was no conquest. There was no subjugation. There was only mutual aid and remembered kindness, and the simple understanding that strength came from lifting others up rather than pushing them down. Historians would later write that the galaxy was transformed by a single moment of compassion. When they chose to protect helpless human refugees, they planted a seed that would grow beyond anything they imagined. That seed was watered by human gratitude and spread by human friendship until it covered the stars. In the archives of Prime, a monument stands in the central plaza of the restored capital. It depicts an elder extending a crystalline hand toward a small human child. The child looks up with wonder and hope. Around them, beings from 100 species reach toward each other in gestures of friendship and support. The inscription on the monument is written in every language of every member species. It says the same thing in each. Kindness given freely, gratitude remembered forever, we are not alone. And beneath that, in letters carved deep into the crystal, is the motto of the Gratitude Compact. The words that humanity brought to the stars and that now echo across every world that has chosen kindness over cruelty. We remember every favor, and our gratitude echoes across worlds. The story did not end there, of course. Stories never truly end. They simply become part of larger stories. The Gratitude Compact faced challenges and crises and moments when it seemed the old darkness might return. But always there were beings who remembered. Always there were species willing to help. Always the light spread a little further into the void. And somewhere in the archives of human history, a little girl of 7 years old is still looking through a viewport at singing lights that have come to save her people. She does not know that her granddaughter will one day return that favor. She does not know that a moment of alien compassion will reshape the galaxy. She knows only that she is safe now. She knows only that someone cared enough to help. That is where all of it began. That is the foundation upon which everything was built. A simple act of kindness given to strangers with nothing to offer in return. Humanity remembered, and because they remembered, the universe became a little less cold, a little less dark, a little more like home.